Hi everybody, it's Susan from Sunrise Quilt Studio, and today I'm starting a new quilt project. This time, instead of a sampler quilt, I'm making a 2-block quilt. I bought a layer cake, and I'm going to show you what I'm going to do to make this quilt. Okay, we are at my cutting table right now, and I'll show you the blocks I'm going to make. Now, they're going to be from different fabrics. This is some leftover Christmas fabric. This quilt is called Posies and Diamonds, and here's our posy block, and here is the diamond block. And we're going to alternate these blocks throughout the quilt. Now these are my sample blocks, so I'm going to set those aside and refer to those as I need to. And I'm going to show you what I've got here. I already started cutting, and I bought a layer cake. This is Laguna Sunrise from Chelsi and Sherri from Moda, and I've gone ahead and cut all the pieces I need for the posy blocks. Those are up here. At least these are the prints. I haven't cut the backgrounds yet. Okay, so I cut up 32 of the print fabrics, the darker prints, into 4.5-inch squares. So we got 4.5-inch squares from each 10-inch square. And then I chose 4 of the low volumes, cut those into 1.5-inch squares, and I need a total of 128 half-inch squares. So you don't need the full 10-inch square for that, but you want to cut 4 for each block. So what you basically need is 32 1.5-inch squares from each 10-inch square. Now this peach floral fabric is going to be the diamonds as well as the inner border. So here's the diamond here. I made this one a dark green. It's going to be peach in this quilt. And so I have my background fabric. This is the background from the line. It's a little floral print. It looks like this print here, only it's white. So I hope you can see that. Cute little print. And then the outer border will be this print here. Never can figure out how to hold that. There we go. This is the print. So that's the outer border. And then I still have several squares left over of low volume prints. So I can find another project to use these for. So I'm going to get started cutting the diamonds, the squares I need to make the diamonds, and those are going to be 2.5-inch squares. So I'm going to move all of this out of the way and get started cutting these. So I need 4 2.5-inch squares for each block, and there will be 32 of the diamond blocks as well as 32 of the posy blocks. So that means I need 128 2.5-inch squares. Okay, so I've got my end squared up, and I'm going to flip it around, make sure everything is lined up. And now I need a bunch of 2.5-inch squares. Now you can cut your borders first if you want to. I don't mind piecing my borders, but if you're someone who doesn't, then I would go ahead and cut your borders first. I want to see exactly how many pieces, how many strips I need to cut from the yardage. Okay, I can get 16 2.5-inch squares from each. So let me go to the regular calculator. I need 128, so divide that by 16. That means I need 8 strips. Okay, that will help speed things up a little bit. So there's all different ways to cut your fabric. I'm going to cut a 5-inch strip here. And then cut it down to 2.5. Okay. So there's 3. Okay, so now this is what I have left over for my borders. So I have quite a bit there. And now I'm going to cut these into 2.5 inch squares. So I'm going to cut off the selvage. And do this however works best for you. This is a 4.5 inch square. I can use this. I could use my big 10 inch long ruler. This is a 5 inch ruler, so I can use this like I did my 10 inch ruler on the strips, and cut it to 2.5 here. I have a new blade on here, so I'm not sure why it's skipping. I must have a groove in my mat somewhere. Okay, I have all my 2.5 inch squares for my diamond blocks all cut, so I'm going to set them aside. And I have also cut my strips for the diamond blocks for the background, and I cut 14 4.5 inch wide strips for my yardage. Now I need to cut those into 4.5 inch squares, and I need 128 of those. And I've got my 4.5 inch ruler I'm going to use, and I just want to make sure everything is lined up. And I'm going to go ahead and cut off the selvage, and I'm going to cut from this side. This side's just a little bit shorter than the back side, so I just want to make sure I have all that selvage off. Now when I was cutting the 2.5 inch squares, the calculator said I could get 16 2.5 inch squares out of a 42 inch strip, but that strip was probably closer to 43, so I was able to get 17. So I'm going to have some extra 2.5 inch squares. So I'm going to cut all of these strips here into 4.5 inch squares. And when I'm making a quilt like this that I have just 2 blocks in it, I like to just go ahead and do all the cutting at once. So I'll spend an evening or two cutting everything, and then all I have to do from that point is to sew. And I should be able to get 8 to 9 4.5 inch squares. So there's 8, so I'd be able to get an extra one from here. And ideally I should press that before I cut it, but I'm going to just cut it the way it is. And this is always good for any time that I might make a mistake. So I'll have a couple of extra. So I think, pull out my calculator again. Okay, it said I can get 9 out of a square, so I need all of those. So I need 9 squares. So, oops, knocked off my rulers. Okay, so I need all 9 squares, and I will just continue cutting. Now these are real simple blocks to make, but it'll make a pretty spring quilt. And this quilt will be about 83 to 85 inches. I can't remember exactly what, but I was thinking it was 83 inches. And if you want it larger, you can add more blocks or more borders, or just increase the width of your borders. But this will make a good full-size quilt. It won't be quite big enough for a queen, but it'll be close. So you could just add one more row of blocks to make it longer or wider, because there isn't an up or down to this quilt. It's changeable. You can change it. So, but you would need more fabric. And with this layer cake, I used all of the darks for the posy blocks, so I'd have to use the low volumes for the rest of the posy blocks that I would need. Okay, so now I have all of my 4.5 inch blocks. So my 4.5 inch pieces for my diamond blocks. So those will be these pieces here. So I have everything cut out for the diamond blocks, but I'm still not done cutting because I need the background for the posy block, which are these pieces here. These are 1.5 inch squares. I need 12 for each block. I have 32 blocks, so I need 384 1.5 inch squares. So that's another round of cutting. Okay, so now I have all of my 1.5 inch background squares cut. Everything's cut out now and ready to start sewing. And I'll show you my stacks here. There's all of the diamond block squares, and here are the centers of the diamond blocks right here. So I've got those, and then this stack is the posy blocks. I've got the prints and the centers, and then these white squares back here are all the backgrounds for these. So everything's all cut out, and I'll be ready to start sewing next time I have a chance to get in the sewing room and get some work done. Thanks for watching. For more quilting ideas, click on the video links, and to keep up with my latest projects, click on the subscribe button. I hope to see you again soon.